Boo!
I do think mine you're going to enjoy.
I'm looking forward to it.
Actually, I guess I could start queuing up the music. Yeah, the name of this story, again, is why I chose it. It was very intriguing to me. It kind of like, because we came off of the Man in the Cloak in the Graveyard story, and I was like, man, this story is amazing. This is the name of it, you know? It's called The Man in the Yellow Raincoat. Here we go. So this is a story that happened to my mom's friend in Korea about 10 years ago. Every time I hear this story, I still get chills. My mom's friend lived in an apartment complex. She was a stay-at-home mother with a young daughter, and her husband worked during the days. One day she was coming home from running errands with her daughter and got onto the elevator in her building. When she got on, she noticed that there was a man wearing a cap and a yellow raincoat, and he kept his head low so that she couldn't really see his face. She immediately felt really uneasy because of this, and she made her daughter stand to her side, furthest side away from this man. What made her feel even more uncomfortable was that when she pressed a button on her floor, there was no other number lit up already. And on top of that, she noticed that he was carrying something wrapped inside a newspaper close to his side. Things started to click in my mom's friend's head, and she started to panic and decided to take out her cell phone and pretend she was calling home to her husband, who was obviously really not home and was at work. She started saying things like, "Oh, I'm on the elevator, about to get off. Can you get the door for me, please?" And making it seem like her husband was waiting at home for her. When the elevator did reach her floor, I think she lived on something like the 12th floor, she quickly got off the elevator and grabbed her daughter and started to walk as fast as she could to her apartment. She noticed that the man also got off on that floor and was slowly following her from down the hallway at a distance. When my mom's friend got to her door, she started to bang on it and shout, "Hey," husband's name, "I'm home. Please open the door." It kind of pretended like, and he was coming to answer the door, like she was talking back with somebody. Upon seeing this, the man in the yellow coat started to walk away back towards the elevator. When he seemed to be far enough away, my mom's friend quickly picked up her daughter and slid open her door's passcode thingy. This is how people get in and out of apartments in Korea. And started to frantically punch in her key code. But the problem was the buttons would make sounds that were loud. So the man knew that no one was going to answer the door for her, and he turned around and started to run back towards them. My mom's friend, at this point, was frantically screaming and trying to push the buttons as quickly as she could. When she finally got her door open, the first thing she did was throw her daughter in through the door. When she got herself in, she saw that the man was inches away. She managed to shut the door and lock it before he could wedge his hand or weapon into the door. Afterwards, looking through the door's peephole, she saw the man was walking away back towards the elevator. Fast forward to several months later. My mom's friend was watching the news, and there was coverage on the capture of a serial killer named Young-chul, who used to kill a lot of different sex workers and other women in the area. She told my mom that she could never forget the dread she felt when she saw the too familiar picture of him in a yellow raincoat and the exact same hat he was wearing in the elevator at that time. He was also wearing it when he was apprehended. So that is the end of the story, but they did go ahead and attach the Wikipedia page of this guy to the story. So let me see if I can share my screen. This guy is legitimate, very creepy. Yeah, so if you look through the coverage here, this guy is a legitimate South Korean serial killer. Sex offender, obviously, and cannibal. He admitted to the murders of multiple people, mostly sex workers and wealthy old couples. They convicted him of 20 murders and mutilated at least 11 of his victims. Admitted he ate their livers to some of them. He committed crimes between actually, it was about, looks like less than a year if you look at this article, September 2023 to July 2024. Apprehended in July. His motives in front of the TV camera, what did he say? Women shouldn't be, wow, this slur word there. And the rich should know what they've done. Apparently this guy had been married, he had a son, previously convicted 14 times of several different charges, and served 7 years in prison prior to his string of murders here. We can look at some of these details as we go in here, but he did confess to killing 19 of them, apparently. He admitted to additional murder. a male street vendor. He eventually confessed to killing 28 people. This is several days after his arrest. He continued to, confess more and more as he went along here. I don't really know more details I can go into without being too gruesome, but the motives here, this section, I thought this was interesting. Based on the content that was in his apartment, searched after his arrest, there was some speculation that he patterned his killings after several movies, including Public Enemy, Very Bad Things, A Normal Life. He later confessed to being inspired by another serial killer, I haven't heard of this person, who had murdered 9 wealthy people. Okay, so psychologists assessed this guy, concluded that he was not mentally ill, but exhibited usual signs associated with antisocial disorder, whereby a person creates their own belief system based on distrust of moral and social norms. He's still detained in a detention center. Apparently, this was sparked great debate on capital punishment. Let's go to the chat real quick. What a psychopath! These guys are a freak, like the Ripper. Yeah, I think the terrifying part is we always hear about these serial killers, but this person literally came face to face with this person. Can you imagine what would be running through your mind afterwards, knowing what could have happened potentially?
Yeah, that's something else. Hadn't heard of that. I've heard of other serial killer encounters before, like people that later found out that they were within striking distance of a serial killer, and their thought process on this was something else though. Him actually chasing after her and knowing 100% that had she not gotten in as quick as she did, that he would have killed them both, probably.
Could you feel the tension as I was reading this story?
That's a rough one.
Like putting in the passcodes into the door.
Yeah, and I've seen them have those in videos of showing people getting into apartments in Korea, and I think even Japan might have that as well. So yeah, I know what they're talking about when she mentioned that. Yeah, that's nuts. That's a terrifying story. Terrible person, obviously, and it reminds me of a TV series I watched recently called Blackbird. Have you seen it?
No.
It's a true story about a serial killer and this guy who was put in jail for drugs, and he was given an option to try to spy on this serial killer, to confess to murders so that they could put him away forever, as opposed to being put away for just an assault charge that they had him on. It's terrifying the way when he gets him to talk about what he did to people. You also kind of see what he did to people because they dramatize it,
Yeah.
And I was reading, when you brought up that Wikipedia page and reading it as it was going along, it was oh, this reminds me of that guy in Blackbird. Horrible person. Both these people, horrible people, did the worst imaginable things on the planet. That is one of the scariest stories ever that you just read that I think we've heard on here because of the fact this person encountered a monster. This reminds me also of your with the serial killer calling into Howard Stern radio show. When you encounter pure evil in this form, it leaves a mark on you.
Yeah.
No matter what. So I find that to be just absolutely terrifying. And this is a story that I want to ruminate on for days going forward. And I'm probably going to look it up, all those people, because I get this thing where I can't get something out of my head. When I start hearing about it, and this is one of those things I know I'm not going to get out of my head. I want to be, looking up what this person, how they caught him and stuff like that, because that was terrifying.
Makes me wonder what was in that newspaper he had rolled up or folded up.
Probably a knife.
Yeah.
In my guess, would probably be a knife, something that he could force his way in with.
I immediately understood the creepy factor. If you were to get on an elevator with a suspicious looking person and there was no other button pushed.
Yeah.
I thought that was so I thought this lady had a great attention to detail in the moment that saved their lives. That was the first step, right?
Yeah.
You get on and you're like, what the heck? There's no where's this person going? There's no button pressed, and you just start to observe things. Then to think to call her husband or pretend, to call her husband.
Yeah.
Then to do the same thing as she's at the door.
And it's very smart, but it reminds me of something I heard described about being scared. when you're scared, your heart beats faster, so blood pumps through your body. It's like rocket fuel to your brain, right?
Yeah.
You can run faster, fight harder, anything. It's like a superpower, being afraid, if you use it right. Something about him was off as soon as she stepped on board that kicked in all of her fear. That's the only thing that saved her. It's interesting that, people in duress, different forms of duress, become superhuman. The speed at which she, punched in those numbers, remembered them perfectly, that, she might have fumbled once or twice in a normal situation where she isn't paying attention.
Yeah.
That would have cost her life.
Sometimes when you have a kid, you're pretty occupied too, so I give her credit for seeing these things. Do you think he started running back? You think that really pissed him off?
I think so. I think he was probably thinking...
This guy's a psycho, right? I mean...
Yeah. He probably assumed at first he had an easy mark. And then after he was, thinking, well, I don't know that I could take on an adult woman and an adult man at the same time. And then when he realized that wasn't the case, he was definitely filled with a sense of anger and embarrassment, which would have made him more dangerous and possibly do worse things. Because people who are embarrassed, people who are small and monstrous, will do horrible things. And it's one of those things where it's like a monster like that isn't a powerful person. They're a small, evil goblin who will do things that are horrible.
I'm reading up on it still to the side over here. It says he was sentenced to death, but they haven't executed anybody since 1997.
I could see that happening. A lot of people are on death row for like 30, 40 years. So even here, where, our country is much more loose with using the death penalty. So I can definitely see that being that way in another country.
Real quick, we do have some timeline on the events of this guy. 1998, he had a theft charge. 3 years later, he had a more serious theft charge that landed him 10 years in prison. Got out within 2 years. Looks like he got married. That same year, he got sentenced for theft to 8 months in prison. After getting out, his son was born within a year after that. 1998, he had theft, forging, identity theft, sentenced to 2 years in prison. Sexual assault in the year 2000, sentenced to 3 years and 6 months in prison. When that happened, his wife divorced him. In 3 years, he gets out of prison. And then, within 13 days of getting out of prison, after that longer sentence and after his divorce, that's when the killing started. He's still currently in prison, it looks like. Date of execution yet to be determined. This guy's an absolute monster. Cannibal, crazy. Lucky to be alive, though. This is a scary story. I mean, I don't know how else to word it. Like, when I read it, I was like, this is so freaky. Then I clicked on the page that was in the link, and the person later modified it and said, if you want to know more about this, look this here.
I mean,
and as I read it again, cold chills all over again, dude. I was just like, this is freaking terrifying.
We've said it a few times that some of the worst monsters are just human beings, right?
It's not like I don't know what this person was going to do to me. They were like really suspicious. You probably know what he was going to do to you.
There are some people you can look at where you're just like, I know I need to keep an eye on this person because I can't let them follow me. I can't let them get me alone.
Incredible story, though. I'm glad that person shared that.
Yeah.
Jeff Townsend Media. CG, good night.
And the question is, do I stay here? Will you be back? Are you gonna come back? Will you be back? Are you coming back?